Hello Cobranauts, welcome to the first episode of a two-part series on MEO, the first modular space station. Did you get that right? That's correct. In today's episode, the very first episode of this two-part series, we are going to be talking about the origins, the beginnings of MEO, and also the kind of establishment and construction of it. And in the next episode, which will be coming out in a couple of weeks probably, we'll talk about the operation of it. So, you know, experiments, projects, programs, disasters, that kind of stuff. But why don't we jump right on into the origins of MEO. The beginning of MEO was in 1976, when on February 17th, the Soviet Union, government of the Soviet Union, authorized the construction of an orbital modular station called MEO. At the time, we didn't have a name, but it ended up becoming called MEO. It was to be an upgraded Salyut station that was to have multiple modules. At first, all of the modules other than the central one was to be based on Soyuz spacecraft. In 1984, though, it was actually paused temporarily so the Soviet Union could put all of the focus on the Buran program, but it ended up getting canceled eventually. Before it got canceled, later that year, MEO was resumed. The orbital assembly of MEO began on the 19th of February in 1986, 10 years almost exactly after it was first authorized to begin development, design, all of that. 4 out of the 6 modules, actually all based on the modules, obviously, follow the exact same protocol for launch and docking and all of that. They would be launched on a Proton K. There should be a card up here to my episode on the Proton rocket. They will be put into orbit. Once they were in orbit, they would then rendezvous and dock to the forward docking port of the core module. They would then, a couple of days later, would be moved over to the whichever docking port they would be going to. It depends on much more. Some went to other ones didn't. Cavant 1, the actual first expansion module, was a very special case. Well, that module actually didn't have any engines. So, it had no engines, right? So, that meant it actually had a small tug that was used to get it to the station. The final module, the docking module, was also a special. Well, actually, that's not really true. This is not really the final module, but it was the last. It's the only module launched that was not by Russia or the Soviet Union. It was the docking module. It was launched and then actually ended up docking to the station on Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-71. In total, MEO had 7 modules. The MEO core module, Cavant 1, Cavant 2, Crystal, Spectral, the docking module, and Primota. The first module launched was the MEO core module. It was to kind of be like the base block of the whole station. It was officially, in the actual person, like all that kind of stuff, was called DOS-7. Because keep in mind, it was a special version of a Salyut station. It held the main living quarters, environmental systems, attitude control, main propulsion, docking for the other modules, an airlock, and a location for Soyuz/Progress vehicles to dock. After that, a couple months went by. A couple months is an interesting term to use for that. The second module and the first expansion module for it was launched, and this is the Cavant 1 launch. We'll talk about briefly about how because it didn't have any engines. It had 2 compartments. One of them was pressurized, the other one was not. It had an X-ray telescope, an ultraviolet telescope, a wide-angle camera, more attitude control, and life support. Like, other than that, it was basically a normal module. Like, it was kind of a scientific module. It's also actually really small. There should be a picture of it, like, up here. The third module launched is the Cavant 2 module. It's basically kind of like a sequel almost to come out one, but it's better. It was the first module, though, to be based on the TKS spacecraft, a picture of which should be right here. It had 3 compartments, an EVA lock, an instrument/cargo compartment, and an instrument/experiment compartment. It also carried, very important for the station, the Soviet version of the Manned Maneuvering Unit, or MMU, which is the suit used on the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station. The Soviet version of it was called the ICOR. I probably butchered that, but that's what it was called. It also, though, had even more life support and more attitude control. By the way, most of these modules have attitude control. And because, like, the designers of the station wanted universal attitude control on the entirety of the station, because it would just make it easier to do. Like, most of the modules had thrusters that could be used to rotate the station as well. The 4th module launched, and kind of one of the, like, the first module launched, other than the Miracles, that was not a Cavant module, is the Crystal Module. It had 2 compartments, like a bunch of the other ones. It had a material processing, astronomical observation, biological experimentation compartment, and the other one was a docking compartment. The docking compartment had 2 APAS-89 docking ports, which were set up to be used for docking with Buran, the Soviet space shuttle. Now, if you have not watched Everyday Astronauts video on it, of Buran, I don't think I would recommend watching it. I will probably never make an episode on Buran, because his episode will be much more in-depth and much better than mine. But yeah, remember how it went through and how it was getting cancelled. But so, after it was cancelled, though, and shortly after it was cancelled, Buran was cancelled, the Mir Shuttle program became a thing. And for the first couple of dockings, the shuttle was actually docking to Crystal, because it didn't have anyone else to dock. It also, Crystal from the docking ports had 2 solar arrays, and a bunch of other stuff that's just kind of, life support, attitude control, all that kind of stuff. The 5th module launched was the Spectral Module, and it was actually the first of 3 modules launched as part of the Shuttle Mir program. It contained living quarters, nest-sponsored experiments, and equipment to remotely observe Earth's atmosphere. It also has solar arrays that generated half of the station's power. That's a lot of power. It ended up, though, actually ending its useful life, only into its life, after it actually sadly had a collision with the Progress M34 spacecraft in 1997. In the next episode, where we talk about disasters and that kind of stuff, we will actually talk about that collision and how it kind of rendered that module completely useless, because it actually damaged it to the point, I want to say they actually had it closed off. Like, straight up, like, closed. The 6th module, and one of the final modules launched, was the docking module. This one was launched aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-71, like we said earlier, before it was launched, before STS-71. Crystal actually had to be moved a bit out of the way so that the solar arrays on it wouldn't collide with the space shuttle. Because, like, there should be a picture right here of what the station looks like with a space shuttle attached to it. Like, the space shuttle is giant compared to the station. They really do not want those, arrays colliding with it, because that wouldn't be good. The docking module had 2 APAS-89 docking ports. One of them was to be docked with Crystal, and the other one would be connected to the shuttle when it was docked, as you could kind of expect. The final module launched of part of Mir was the Primota Module, which looks like this. Looked kind of like a giant antenna on it, kind of thing. Its main purpose was to conduct material experiments. It held experiments from 12 different nations. It had both pressurized and unpressurized compartments, all to be used for experiments. Like this thing's main purpose was experimentation on all kinds of levels. In the next episode, I'm not sure because in a week too, we will talk about a bunch of unmodular systems that the station had. That we'll talk about that. Mir maintained a near circular orbit, just like the International Space Station. it was commonly reboosted by Progress spacecraft. Again, just like the International Space Station. But if a space shuttle was docked to Meal at the time of a reboost, the shuttle would do it because the shuttle's engines were way more better for that than Progress's. Attitude was held by a mixture of 12 gyroscopes and thrusters, like we said earlier. Even though Meal has been out of space and is, deorbited more than almost a decade ago now, it is still really important to look into the past to learn about the future. Because, today we got the International Space Station, which I actually watched pass over my house the other day. But the ISS, part of the ISS is Mio 2. The kind of successor to Mio that Russia planned to build that ended up becoming half of the International Space Station. And a bunch of stuff we have today, a bunch of records and science and whatnot we have today, would not have happened without Mio. Next episode, we will be talking about how it was operated, like I said earlier. But in the end, I hope you've all enjoyed watching this video. The same amount I have enjoyed making it. But until next time, this is Joe the Teenage Astronaut, signing off.